say thank you to Peach Payments, Mama Money, and OfferZen for supporting our community and helping us host cool events like this. From OfferZen side, they're sponsoring some swag for us for this month. So they're running a swag. They're going to be gifting some attendees some swag. And to enter this competition, there'll be a link that I'll send out after this intro. You just need to fill in your details and they'll select some of the attendees and send them the swag for people who are in South Africa. From a tech leadership side, some of you may already know we have a cool tech leadership newsletter, which is a curated list of tech leadership content that we've come across over the month and we believe is useful and will be interesting for you to have a look at. This is an example of the last one we sent out. So as I said, it's links to different content about tech leadership that may be interesting for you to learn and grow from. Again, I'll send out a link post this intro for those who want to join that newsletter. You can just add your email and you will receive this newsletter once a month. We send it out after each meetup. So there'll be one going out tonight. And finally, we also have a Twitter account for tech leadership, where we also share interesting leadership content. At least once a day, there is a link sent out. And if you are on Twitter and you're interested in getting this content, you can also follow this Twitter account. We also share what the next meetups are about, and we'll be speaking on this account. So if you just want to follow what's up and coming from the tech leadership side, you can also follow this account. And that's that. I'll be dropping those links in the Zoom chat for people to sign up for the swag and to see the newsletter and the Twitter accounts. Back to you, Benny.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Tanaka. So our guest needs no introduction, or at least for myself and Tanaka. He's a former colleague of ours back in the day. I'm going to read his official intro, and then I'd love to tell you folks a little bit about him and how much I respect him as a technology professional. So Irfaan is a technology generalist interested in solving interesting problems across strategy, digital operations, and data to deliver inclusive impact for ordinary people. He currently works at Mama Money, a growth stage fintech working to help migrant workers in South Africa send remittance reliably on a socially fair price. I've known Irfaan for close to a decade now. We worked together many years ago, and he's been my partner in crime in many things, from running internships, and has always been a keen product person with an amazing view on how technology serves an end in a way. I think as developers, we, speaking maybe for myself personally, as a developer, you always think about the technology quality engineering practices, and Irfaan is amazing at being able to take a lot of that and distill that and see what's actually useful for a end user perspective. So I've had a lot of great experiences, not only working with him, but having awesome conversations, and I'm really stoked and happy to hear what he's got to share. So his talk tonight is TX, Technology Experience, and it's going to be about his reflections on building out technology and product organization. Sorry, with plural, not just one. So without further ado, Irfaan.
Amazing. Thank you, Benny. For those that don't know, Benny, Tanaka and I worked together at Allen Gray. Tanaka and I actually had the same starting day in January 2011. So it's been 10.5 years. Quite the experience. So I wanted to start maybe by talking about expectations a little bit. The title of the talk is super vague and isn't a thing that actually exists, which means it's made up. So I don't know, I mean, if anyone wants to type around like what expectations are, so that I can massively reduce those expectations, because there's no way I can live up to what Benny has just described. But if there are, yeah, what is a leader? Won't be covering that at all. But if you are thinking about like your expectations, just know like you'll be happier with like super low expectations. So encourage you to aim low, be curious, and be critical about what we're talking about. All right. So the title of the talk has changed a little bit from sort of technology experience and that reflection to try to be a little bit more specific. So 4 trends that sort of we've observed or seen in what we're calling technology experience when growing tech teams. So I'm Irfaan, I work at product at Mama Money, part of a really cool team, which I'll tell you about now. So to start, like, where does this technology experience word or idea come from? Mama Money has had sort of like this incredible success and luck and growth over the last while. So earlier this year, you might have read this article around like COVID growth and the digitalization of remittances. And when I joined Mama Money a year and a half ago, experienced the consequence of growth, which is invariably lots of chaos, right? We're growing in the number of projects that we're doing. We're trying to do more. Excuse me one second. We're trying to do more. It's all being coordinated in a very sort of like loose and fast kind of way, and it was all over the place. So in my naive arrogance, what I proposed or what I started to drive was using a tool to organize all of this chaos, like a project management tool. And that was the start of like my little Asana journey. And I was very gung-ho about it. What I thought was, if we have a nice, clear, like state-of-the-art best practice tool that everyone uses, we'll be able to solve this coordination and communication and duplication problem that we have. So I did what anyone would do, called Asana, set up a call, got a trial account, tested it. It worked really, really well. Got a demo for a couple of folks in the organization, had people trial it, see that it works. It was like a thumbs up, everyone is excited. This was going to change lives. So very happily sort of like rubbed my own hands, was proud of myself for a second, and then just waited for like the amazing success to happen because we had this tool. But that absolutely did not happen. Three things did happen. The first one is folks who were relatively structured, self-organized, and knew how to run these things, had the tool and superpowered their own workflows. So they were getting better at a way of working that they were used to. The second one was unstructured folks, which is very common in a startup because they're more entrepreneurial, sort of more action-oriented, less about processes, corporate, and all of those things. Started using the tools sort of in good faith and trying to be helpful, but over time, like fell back to like their old ways of working. And the third thing that happened was sort of number two, like linked up to number one, which was those structured folks relied on this unstructured folks to use Asana, and they weren't using Asana, and eventually it sort of got given up. So while we do still have the tool, it's used in very sort of sealed off areas of the business for specialized things. And at the end, what I had done was just introduce another like layer of like clutter in like how we're organizing things. Now it was Google Docs plus Jira plus emails plus Slack and Asana, and finding the source of truth can be quite hard. So this is something I've been reflecting on for like the last little while. What should I have done better on like the implementation of this so that we would be more efficient and effective as an organization? Like, was it change management? Should have been more training? Like, should I have been more directive, like with top-down role modeling on like how it's being used? Should I be scolding people that aren't using it correctly? And the reflection is like super interesting because like the folks who stopped using it are smart, capable, kind individuals who want to work together, but for some reason something was getting in the way. And sort of that's a little bit of like the genesis of like where these thoughts have come from. And over the last while, like myself and like our tech management team at Mama Money have been trying to poke around these like soft things that actually like create the conditions for success, or what we're going to call technology experience. So there's three things I'm going to chat about today. So I'll tell you a little bit about the company. I think these platforms are a good place just to share some of the softer stuff that you can't always get. Try to create a little bit of an explanation or framework for technology experience. I think it's something like to start thinking about, that's worth thinking about. And at the very end, talk about 4 observations that we have in all of this. All right, Mama Money. So thanks for that intro earlier, Tanaka. Mama Money is a money transfer operator, or does international money transfer. And what that means is, in South Africa, we have economic migrants or migrants that come from other African countries or Southeast Asia to South Africa to work, with the intention of sending like a bit or quite a lot of the money that they earn home, right? For the sort of reasons that you expect them to, for medicine, for school fees, to invest in businesses back home. 5 years ago, economic migrants to South Africa has been an ongoing thing, but 5 years ago, it wasn't a very favorable environment for them, right? Financial services tend to ignore the needs of them because they're undocumented or asylum seeker and are riskier customers. And there's a little bit of predatory pricing in the market. So Mama Money's mission has been to serve these sort of like underserved communities that also struggle in our environments with xenophobia and documentation, and provide reliable remittance at a socially fair price. So that's the mission. And we know that this mission works because remittances, and there's a lot of like objective studies on this, like when you increase the amount of money that gets sent home, you increase things like education, nutrition, like even like women's rights. So that's the mission. Sending money home. A little bit about like how tech delivers on this mission, I guess, is like the key question, because we're talking about purpose. Like there's a bunch of things that happen. It's a huge engine that's across borders, that's regulated on multiple sides. So we have like partner networks, core transaction engines, and as we go in sort of like into the smart and future versions of what we do, like these are becoming data driven and increasingly sort of like cloud-based. A little bit about the team. These are 37 of the folks that we currently have. If you see someone you recognize, please tell them hello. And the most important question to answer today, what coffee is this team actually part on? Currently at the office, it's the Rosetta Guji Ethiopia blend, which is a little bit fruity, and that's just the way we like it. Cool. Sales pitch is almost over. If Mama Money, the mission, and this sort of thing is something that you might be interested in, please reach out to myself or someone in the chat to say hi. We are looking for folks to help further that. Okay, so that's the sort of Mama Money story, and a little bit about me and my role in there. So let's talk about like this technology experience piece. I know a couple of you on the call, and we all work in the sort of like leadership management sort of roles, right? Where we have influence over other people. And when we think about like what our role actually is, like as tech leaders, like it's like a curious reflection. My sort of view is, as like tech leaders, our mandate given to us by the business or the company is around organizing resources and talent. So like the skills that we have, the tools that we have, and a little bit of money that we're throwing into technology to deliver working software, services, and technology that provides value for customers. If we provide enough of that value in a differentiated way, like it's a win-win, right? Value for shareholders, and we make some money off that. The technology experience, or sort of the thesis that I'm pushing today, is that there's this missing piece that's behind this. Like, what is it that we need to do to enable like the performance, like the delivery and performance like of these folks? And that's this technology experience piece, right? So this piece here, how we organize to deliver value, is something that we've done for a long time. We call, like, you can call it an operator model, how you organize talent and resources, structure, processes, tools, architecture to deliver customer value. And you might have heard of, like, when you think of agile delivery, it's more on this side. But on this left-hand side, it's a little bit of the softer things. So how do we deploy culture, which is this very big, vague, hazy thing, tools, especially developer tools, and processes to help our people perform so that they can deliver on this operating model. And essentially, there's like two major ideas that I want to like share today. The first one is, when you are using the technology folks like in your business to deliver this value, you want them to be able to engage in areas that are as uncertain as possible. Uncertain problems to solve, like lots of unknowns in what they're trying to solve for. The reason why is that is where like real value lies, right? It's the high risk, high reward things, the uncomputed space, the things that are not a commodity, like the truly interesting work lives here. But in order to do that, you need to have like a really clear, intentional, and stable platform in which they work, right? The place where psychological safety comes from, where ways of working are predictable, so that they can engage with this unknown. And the technology experience piece sort of talks to all the stuff on the left-hand side that enables all the stuff on the right-hand side, and thinking about the balance and contrast between them. So that's the super summary. All right, so technology experience, let's chat about a couple of the trends that we are seeing. There are four that I want to talk about today. The first one is like an interesting one for me, and it's sort of like talking about money entering the ecosystem, especially in Cape Town, and the challenges we have with talent, recruiting talent, and how we're fighting amongst ourselves, and a little bit of a call to arms around that. The second one are some interesting impacts that remote communication is having on power and the way that we work. The third one is something we call leaking technology, or the idea that shadow technology is expanding in ways that we might not like realize, and are quite interesting. And the last one, which is especially interesting for me, is this Generation Z model, right? There are these like massive shifts in expectation as a new breed of folks come in. So I'll unpack these a little bit, sort of like one by one, and then think about how we might apply them to this picture before. All right. So the first one is around venture capital and talent. And this is sort of quite subjective and a bit of an opinion, but like in my opinion, startup venture capital is increasing for everyone, and is artificially like inflating the cost of talent like in our ecosystem. So here we can maybe say specifically like Cape Town Tech or Cape Town FinTech even, we are definitely feeling the consequence of having lots of money. And I think it's a bit of a disservice, or like a lose-lose eventually, because we're inflating the price of this talent like in a way that makes it just hard to acquire the folks that you need, and also makes it unfair like when you're overpaying for these. And a little bit of the call to arms is like getting together and having a little bit of collective action, so that we're not fighting each other, and rather we can have a clear united front around fighting big tech, so like the AWSs of the world that are coming in and scooping up jobs, and international remote work, so US and EU based companies that are paying junior developers more than your like CTOs are currently earning. And I think in the next couple of years, there's the opportunity to create like this shared space between companies and people and talent teams to have like a clear mandate together on how to sort of cooperate and fight for talent in the best way. In this engine, sort of like talking about like VC talent and the price of senior talent, because we do need that in the work that we do. new and representative talent, we're talking about sort of like diversity here, or historically like underprivileged folks, like remains undercatered for. When you are running quite lean and you can't afford to hire more people because of the price of those folks, you also can't afford to run internships or mentor or coach younger folks. So this money is having this sort of like sour feeling, in my opinion, which is like widening the gap between those that are already quite senior, quite known, and those that are trying to emerge, sort of creating this dual economy. I hope that's a little bit spicy for everyone. All right. Trend number 2 is around remote communication, remote connectivity, and how it's changing traditional power. 2 years ago, even if you had remote days, there were days in which you had an office and your manager, your tech lead, like the director or VP would see you, and there was this in-person communication that happened, but accelerated by COVID and the fact that for some people, like they haven't been in an office for 2 years or started new jobs and have never met their colleagues face to face. That removal of in-person communication is changing the way that we communicate. So Conway's law says that a company's systems like will always reflect the way that they communicate. And as tech teams become more text-based and living on the edge, away from calls in person and those gatherings, like I think we'll start to see like non-intentional emergent behavior happen there, either in the way that decisions are made or systems are created. This tech becoming like text-based or thread-based, where we communicate like on Slack or Teams or Jira or whatever else it is also like quite different to how like the non-tech business behaves, which is around like staying in sync on video calls with high context. And there's lots of reasons for why that happens, but there are like 2 clear like patterns emerging. And the challenge, or what's interesting for any tech leader or manager in the space, is that you have to be able to sit between the 2. And I don't know if you feel the same, but for me, like you start to recognize the awkwardness, because sometimes in a business call you need quite a quick response, but that needs to spin up on text, and sometimes on a thread there's a question for the business, but there's no one to participate, and so you need to jump on a call to get that and pull it back. And there's a little bit of shepherding and interesting behavior between the 2. A third one, which is very interesting and exciting for me, is in these new models, quick decision making is happening at the edge. So what does that mean? If we think about the collaboration we typically need for delivering software or products, the business has the requirement, product and tech sort of shape that requirement, translate it into development pieces. Everyone comes together, agrees, aligns, delivers. There's a quality piece and a little bit of like back and forth. But with these like increasingly asynchronous pieces or text thread-based pieces, we're able to make very quick decisions like on the edge of systems or where those things are happening. And probably those things are happening out of like your eyesight. So there is a system of technical decision-making that is a little bit invisible. And the last one has been a little bit of a re-education on like my own behalf, which is just because you use Slack and email predominantly does not mean that you are asynchronous. And this is like quite a weird one to wrap your head around and to think about like intentionality. Like, do you want to be an asynchronous company or communicator? And what does that really mean? And how are we currently geared to work in that way? High context, like what is the expectation around replies? Is it pretty immediate within an hour? Like that doesn't sort of mark it as asynchronous. And then just to expand on two quick ideas here, which I find super interesting. So over the last while, about a third of our tech team has joined in the last year. I remember that because like I remember everyone new that's joined, and they've joined a pretty much fully remote sort of work environment. But in doing that, like they've had to establish relationships with different folks, right? Folks within their teams, sort of 5 to 7 people, like different teams, DevOps, data, and the different things that they need, and then just different humans who might have like context. And as soon as you start adding people to this mix, like the number of paths explode. Like there is this communication complexity. And here, like once you start like leaving, like in my opinion, sort of like 7 or 8 people, like you need to start moving to a knowledge-based driven form of communication. So instead of asking a question, like it has to get documented as a question instead. Any answer needs to be like documented in a wiki, Confluence, or whatever it is. Very similar to the GitLab model, always start with a pull request on the handbook. But on a 37-person team, which is what we are, there's just over 2,000 different connections. And that is a crazy thing to try and harness. And then the next one is probably like the article that has served me greatest in my career. It's quite short. I'll send a link out at the end of this. And it's around writing better emails. And the point I'm going to make in a little while is that we all need to reskill on how we communicate like in a fundamental way. This is something I read every sort of like 4 to 6 months, just as a reminder on the simple things that we take for granted in how we communicate in text, because voice and context and body language is not available to like highlight the most important or least important things, simple things, and standardizing on these, like being specific with dates or where you include references or where you communicate even matters. The asterisk at the end of the async comms is that this isn't actually asynchronous, but it looked like a good title. Okay, so we talked about funding and the fact that we're fighting each other. We talked about communication, and it's changing the way that we work. The next one is around like what I call like leaking technology. 3 key ideas here. The first one is that increasingly, as like SaaS like explodes and becomes easier to plug into, other departments in your organization that are not tech delivering value to customers, it might be marketing building out their funnel, or customer building out like customer experience things, are running shadow tech organizations because they need to plug into your customer, they need extra data, they need to run all of these things. And shadow tech is usually a way to bypass the technology organization because they're too busy or have other priorities. And then there's an interesting trade-off here, which is allowing folks to do their own thing, pay their own bills, and get software running, and thinking about the harmonization of all of these pieces and what it means like in our overall capability, and making a decision about who thinks about all of these things together. The second one is also super interesting to me, which is like the developer experience, what I think DevOps is transforming into. When a developer joins a team, they essentially need 2 types of tooling: abstraction to make complicated things simple so they can focus on the problem that they need to solve, and tools for exploring complexity, logging and all of that good stuff so that they can see exactly what is happening. The way your dev tech stack is set up, the infrastructure that you're using, the tooling that you're using, how you deploy, like how code is compiled, packaged, is becoming increasingly opinionated. There isn't sort of like a mixing like best of breed. It's getting more opinionated and determines how productive your developers are going to be. And I think that this developer experience sort of architecture role is going to increasingly become part of like a DevOps kind of world. So how do we organize our tooling so that the talent that needs to deliver software is geared up to do that in the most high performance way and can focus on solving work and business problems rather than debugging tooling problems. And then the last one, which is I think like 5 to 8 years away, is this gradual shift from deterministic programming, so if this then that, more procedural, to machine learning or AI-based things. So data-driven pieces that are using like softer algorithms to make decisions or decide what to show, what to do or show our customers. And the idea here, or talking about this, is like, where are those skills going to come from? When do we start investing in them, and how do we attract them in time? All right. And then the last one is around like this new batch of kids joining our teams. In the next sort of like 5 to 7 years, most of our talent with like those critical key new skills like machine learning, crypto, quantum, those sorts of things, will be this Generation Z like category of people. And they do have different expectations of the world, of life, and of their work. Like we've seen that they are more demanding of organizations to live up to purpose, their own, others. They live in a world of being active and voicing those things out. And then very like interestingly, like I grew up in asset management and then like management consulting, where you did your hard yards and you earned your stripes. These folks are willing to do more interesting work for less pay, which is like an interesting shift in motivation and incentives, and ask some hard questions about how do you build these personalized experiences for them to find meaning in their work, especially when they need to do like the hard work of building up those new skills. And there's this piece around like expectation. So waiting 5 years to sort of move from junior to senior, all of those things don't really apply. There's this expectation of personalization and faster promotions. This is just around the pay versus more interesting roles, like and the research around it. Okay, so that was a snapshot into a couple of the things that like we're noticing and that is making our lives like interesting or complicated, or having us ask questions. How do we fight for talent, pay a fair price in a world that is increasingly flooded with like VC money? What is it that we need to relearn and reskill, especially as leaders, in how we communicate? And do we keep these two worlds separate, as like tech and non-tech, and how they work? And what is some of the intentionality we need to introduce there? The third one is like, there are these 3 paradigms of technology. There's what we deliver to customers. There's the technology we use to enable our devs, this dev experience, and there's this rest of business technology, typically SaaS, that has to be integrated. And what should that approach be? And the last one is this change in expectations from these Gen Z folks. Okay, I mean, hopefully that was all interesting and you resonate, or you disagree wildly, which is also good. I think a good critical mind is useful. I'm going to try and bring this back now to talk like in that TX sort of framework that I proposed, like what all of this might mean. Okay, so how might we apply these trends to this like technology experience? So in the sort of VC and talent piece, like I think here we need like just a radical call to arms. So for every company, like if you're represented on this call, or fintechs in Cape Town, to sit together and talk about how we organize for win-win. We will always try to attract the best talents, but we should move towards attracting folks based on purpose and like what we do, and have a fair price that we can and hold and create a bit of a moat against us and like very big tech or international money. And then the more important one, which is like maybe a bit of a social justice question, is collectively, how can we invest in young and underrepresented talent, right? This will always be, this might be sort of a like a non-critical like investment for folks, and we expect like the old mutuals of the world to do it because they're big enough and they can take the burden. But we need to figure out what this looks like, how to do it, even if those folks don't end up staying with us. The next one is around remote comms, and I think without exception, like I know many of you on the call and I respect you, but we all have to reskill on communicating in this like remote first world and this increasingly asynchronized world, to recognize patterns, to know how to bridge like these two worlds of increasingly asynchronized tech and less so for business, and understanding how to introduce like intentionality in that. The third one is around like leaking tech. I mean, I don't have like any like interesting pieces, like anything innovative here, other than to say like even within like startups, like solution architects have to have a little bit of this enterprise architecture view. How is the business end to end organized to deliver what we need to do? I think there'll also be like a new category or a new like requirement for DevOps, which is around like designing and delivering this developer experience. So how do we enable those developers to deliver value effectively, and investing in the new skills that we need early. And then the last one is this Gen Z shift. I actually didn't finish writing out the sticky. To get super clear on purpose and know how to articulate it clearly, well, with conviction, and it's something that you believe in. And the sentence that's not complete there is like also learning how to engage with what motivates them and understanding them. Cool. So all of that comes together in this sort of like framework, this operating model that we're all pretty familiar with, and then this technology experience piece. So I think the question is, it's cool to talk about this conceptually, like it might help like a few things fall into place, like where do you actually start in thinking through how to do this? Operating model part like is not hard. I mean, this is something I used to teach as part of an MBA course, like very standard way to think about what is your supply, your demand, how much, what cost needs to be. You can pay a consulting company like 800,000 Rand. They'll give you a nice 60-page slide deck with lots of words like agile and digital, and you'll be golden. On the technology experience piece, I think this is a longer term like reflective exercise between like the technology leadership in your companies and gradually growing that out with folks to bring them on the journey. And it starts with 3 pieces. So first one is to take a bold stance on purpose, right? And to be very clear on that and know what it means and have a lot of conviction. The second one is to describe with some intent, like your value agenda. So in this technology organization, what do we need to be good at in a differentiated way, right? So we're not looking to be the same as everyone else, but like where is our competitive advantage? Is it in sort of like our technical expertise? Is it in the way that we collaborate? Like what is that specific thing that we want to be good at? And what are the things that we are like deprioritizing? And then the last part that sort of brings the first 2 together is a differentiated and opinionated culture that is not necessarily for everyone. And this is quite a weird one to think about because if your culture is strong and differentiated, you might meet an excellent candidate who's very good at what they do, who is a good person, but is not for your company. And that's okay. All right. So 2 quick notes to sort of like wrap up. The first one is note on like on distinctive culture. So I'm sure like many of you have read these books, and a question to ask is which one is right? And then the answer obviously is it depends. But the danger of different folks like reading different books and coming to an organization, like I'm quite partial to like the Ben Horowitz way, because like it's very sort of like aggressive and about like intent and execution. But if in an organization you're bringing like the best bits of all of these books or these thinkings or philosophies, like what you have is like mush. Like you need a coherent culture that is opinionated and a way to scope things in and out. You can't have a best of breed that pulls from everyone, because you don't get the sort of the strength in that armor. So on distinctive culture, like it's worth spending like a lot of time thinking about who you are and who you aren't, and what you're excluding. And then culture's indirect impact on diversity. And this is something that's like super important to me, but also like very hard to wrap my head around. In our organizations, especially tech, like we know that we want to be diverse. Like it starts with like a very like human prerogative, right? It is the right thing to do, and that should be enough. But in companies, like something that in our tech organizations, something that you notice is like when you say like, okay, we've got this culture and this is our team works together, but that tends to mean we hire people that look alike and think alike and come from the same place. And in a lot of circumstances, like especially where the problem they're trying to solve is stable, they will do better. Diverse. And it's hard to champion why diversity is important, like in that context. But when you are working with less known problems, less well-known problems that are sort of vague and require like more variety of thought, that diversity helps you. So building out like the middle of this blue block, having more ways of thinking to solve gnarly problems here to deliver that value. But the psychological safety and trust that you need to build has to come from a super stable technology experience, right? Everyone needs to know what the culture is, how to act, what to expect from each other, so that they can apply their minds in these creative ways. And diversity is quite hard to think about, and separating out the value judgment from what you have access to and the market and what the imperative there is. All right, so to wrap up on everything we talked about today, as we come to the end, talked about a little bit about normal money and our purpose. And if you're interested to find out more, please reach out to myself or ping someone in the chat. Talked about this technology experience, which to super summarize is, as technology leaders, we need to organize talent and resources to deliver value to customers. To do that, we need to deploy culture, tech, and processes to enable that high performance. And we talked about the 4 trends. All right, so to bring it all the way back to this Asana story, like on reflection, it wasn't a tool choice that resulted in this failure, or poor people, or negligent people, or any of those things. It was, I was trying to solve a project management problem, when really what the problem to be solved was, where does decision making happen? So in our environment, decision making, even in the business, happens very quickly at the edge, because we have a very execution oriented mindset. And having to go back to the center, like, oh, let's coordinate everything on Asana and update things, just got in the way and was too slow. And in an environment where we value and value getting things done, having a call, updating a working document, seeing the spreadsheet, doing all of those things there was easier, more effective, and better than having to go to someone, tick a box, see where things are, follow up, which is sort of a reflection on like this technology experience. Cool. That wraps it up from me. Thank you for your time and indulgence listening to this. I'm sure it's a bit vague and esoteric. And then a big hello from like our Mama Money team. Super. I'll stop there. I think we can go into discussion. I don't think I can answer any questions because a lot of this is made up. Yeah. How do you guys normally moderate? Benny, Tanaka?
You're muted, Benny.
I thought I muted there. We usually take a look at the questions in the chat and pose a couple. And the first one is, I think you addressed it already. What even is leadership? So I think that's a great question from Marco. I think it's a good question. Hopefully by attending a lot of these sessions we'll be able to answer. But if you want to maybe take a stab at that, Irfaan, you're more than welcome to.
Sure. I mean, market answers, I don't know. I think it manifests in different ways. There's technical leadership, so someone who's able to provide like guidance, like because they know what to do. Like management leadership, someone who like organizes things. Then there's influence, so someone who is respected and can like win hearts and minds. And then there's just sort of like aggressive determination, someone who is like hell-bent on changing things and does whatever's required. I think in like the context of what we're talking about today, like this technology experience, it's anyone who's thinking about like how to enable performance of people to deliver, right? So if you think about like improving a process or culture or mindsets, like there's an element of leadership in there.
And I think I loved to add to that, the one cool thing that you highlighted in one of your slides is this idea of outlining the purpose quite straightforward. Obviously, from an organizational perspective, it's great, but maybe within one's teams and things like that for a team lead, understanding what you do is, I think, vital. And it takes good leadership to do that. So yeah, I thought I'd like, this is not a question, but a comment from Toya regarding talent. Might be the time where local companies in SA become more innovative in finding ways to partner with or beef up ways to secure investment to retain, attract talent, especially in the current climate. So I'm not sure if anyone agrees with that, but it's definitely something that maybe the community could discuss in future things. So that's it. There's a lot of praises for your talk here, Irfaan. And then I think there's another question from Marco. Do you believe the mindset Gen Z is good or bad on how they approach things?
I have a lot of feelings about Gen Z as an elder millennial who struggled to sort of just like engage and manage them. It's not good or bad, it's just different, right? Like a different world experience in how they're growing up and different experiences with technology as well, like what they have access to. I think in my experiences, having to like be coached through some of these experiences, like aligning on purpose, even like expectations of each other is the first step, right? Like what are we working towards together? Like what do you think you need from me? What do I think I need from you? And negotiating that space. Not good or bad, just different, but also I think it can be very disorienting when you have like an implicit bias on how the world works, right? I will do the work, I will earn my stripes, I will be recognized and get promoted, and this is the way it works for everyone. Versus I will push in sort of different extraordinary ways, and I will ask for what I want like much sooner. And if there's a different opportunity, I'm willing to vote with my feet by leaving quite quickly. Like there's no shame. Shame is sort of a strong word. Like I think for older folks, there's a little bit of resistance around leaving somewhere too quickly. Have I tried hard enough? What will this look like on my CV? For younger folks, that doesn't apply as much.
Awesome, thanks for the insightful answer. Paul Glattis has a question for you, Irfaan. How do you see the coordination of engineering pay amongst SA companies actually taking place? As the world goes more remote and increasing amount of VC money flows in, what approaches do you think can prevent inflation of salaries?
I have no idea. I know that it's a challenge. So am I against people getting paid more? Like, no, obviously. I'd like to get paid more. But I think there's sort of like the fairness and what it means for everyone else when a couple of folks are like massively overpriced, like in the market, and we need those skills. Yeah, how to think about that or standardize or rectify is something in a world that is like increasingly global, and South African talent is actually cheap, like relative to the rest of the world. I don't know.
Awesome. I think that's something that we should try to tackle as a community at some point, because I think a lot of folks are faced with that challenge. So maybe, Tanaka, we should note that as a topic we should try to gather people and talk about. So I think it's one of those really, really interesting questions. And with multiple solutions, and maybe something that the community has a good answer to as a collective. Thanks for the question, Paul. I think that's a very challenging one that we need to think about. Sokotra has a question here. What are some experiments you're going to focus on in the next while, given this TX technology experience? And I think that's the last question for the evening.
Sure, maybe to like pull back the curtain a little bit at like Mama Money, 37 folks, 7 teams, which try to like, which are pretty like self-organized. We are pushing quite hard on that second piece, which is around like communication and shared expectations with each other. So that's evolving in like ordinary agile things, like how we organize ceremonies, exchange information, like working between teams and identifying like those interfaces. And then like the next frontier, or alongside that for us, is like, how do we create shared expectation between tech and non-tech, so that there's a more transparent but trusted way to communicate.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Irfaan. So it's been awesome to get a whole bunch of your insights. I'm always very interested to see how your mind works and the keen observations you make in sort of our industry in general. And thank you so much for talking to us. As customary for us here at Tech Leadership, we always gift our speakers with a cool book, either from Audible or Kindle, or one of the platforms where you can get a hard copy. So thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, and hopefully you'll be able to gain something from that again. Come back and talk to us again once you've read a couple more books. So that's kind of it from us. I think, Tanaka, I don't know if you want to just talk about our sponsors and newsletters and swag again. Do you want to just go ahead and do that?
Cool. Thanks, Winnie. Just to wrap up, once again, just to say thank you to our sponsors for the evening, Peach Payments, Mama Money, and OfferZen, for supporting our community and just helping us to host events like this. And then, as mentioned earlier, I just posted the links in the chat again. We do have a Tech Leadership newsletter that will be going out about an hour after the meetup. We send that out once a month. And in that, we have curated links to interesting tech leadership content that we've found over the month that we believe you could learn from. So if you want to sign up for that newsletter, just follow the link in the chat and you can drop your email there. And then we also have a Tech Leadership Twitter account where we do push out links. At least once a day, there's a link to, again, curated content around tech leadership and announcements on what's happening with the meetup and what's coming next. So that's it. We do have that offers and swag competition. You can also grab the link now and fill in the form afterwards if you haven't filled it in. That's it from my side.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope you have a terrific evening and a terrific week ahead.